Alrighty, guys, I just wanted to go ahead and say thank you all for coming to the channel and watching everything that has been posted on here so far. I did want to announce a new type of league that I wanted to get into running over on twitch.tv/Necosaurus, and of course on the Spicy Tech channel as well. And it is a $15 Commander League. The idea behind it is that Commander is a format that should be there for everyone, and while there are budget channels that have done an amazing job at making budget decks for players, I do think sometimes just saying, hey, how much entertainment is an hour of your work worth? If people talk about minimum wage should be at least $15 an hour, why don't we go ahead and make a Magic deck that is $15? But let's go one step further. Not only will we make a Magic deck that is $15, but we should also start a league where people will bring their own brews of $15 decks, both to card shops and, of course, on Spell Table to play with each other, and eventually on the Spicy Tech Discord once that gets set up and ready to go. So if that seems like something that you would want to do, then let's go ahead and get into the deck. But first, let's go over the rules here. The decks must function. It can't just be a random pile of cards that you threw together and then it just is a deck. Of course, you can do that. Nothing's stopping you from doing that, but the idea is to actually build a cohesive strategy within the confines of having a deck that's total cost is $15 or less, not counting your commander. Your commander should be a $1 or less commander. This will limit the pool of available commanders for people, but it will also guarantee that everybody who is making a deck in this format is on a somewhat even playing field. The only thing that should be between you and having fun here is your ability to brew a deck. And if you have issues brewing your own decks, then maybe this is a good time for you to either learn a little bit about deck brewing or get a friend who is good at brewing a deck, hand him these sets of rules and say, make me something for this. So let's go ahead and real quick go into the deck of my choice that I will be building first for this, or we will go ahead and showcase. It is Eowyn Shield Maiden. She is a commander who was released with the Lord of the Rings set. She had a precon for herself. She's widely available. She is 26 cents on TCG Player to get a copy of Eowyn, and her ability is that at the beginning of combat on your turn, if another human entered the battlefield under your control, create 2 human knight tokens. They have trample, they have haste, and if you have 6 or more humans, you also get to draw a card. She costs red, white, blue, and has 2 generic mana as well, and she herself is a 5/4 with first strike. This woman is a house, and if you have not played the Eowyn precon, then I'm sorry, it is one of the more fun combat-centric decks. But I wanted to see if we could build this for $15, and it turns out there's a lot of really cool things we can cram into this deck under that $15 budget. So let's first look at the draw power we are going to be using. She herself has draw power attached, but she really needs to be backed up with more draw because you are going to be playing an aggro deck. You need to be able to get cards in your hand so you can throw cards on the board. We have Quarrel's End. It lets you loot around, draw 2 cards, and then create a 1/1 human soldier to increase your human count for Eowyn. Mentor of the Meek. Every time a creature that has power 2 or less enters the battlefield, you can pay 1 to draw a card. Rumor Gatherer also, every time a creature enters the battlefield, you scry, but if it's the second time it happens, you get to draw a card. Both of these combo amazingly well with Eowyn's ability. Boromir Gondor's Hope. Anytime it enters the battlefield or attacks, look at the top 6 cards of your library, grab a human, put it into your hand, free of charge. This thing will generate you a ton of value. But speaking of a ton of value, let's talk about Distant Melody, Minas Tirith Garrison, and Mass Appeal. Each one of these basically draws you a card for every human you control, and you will be spitting out a ton of humans. Think of these as spells that after you play them, you'll generate anywhere between 3, 4, 5, 6, sometimes even 10 cards, depending on your board state. Horn of the Mark. Whenever 2 or more creatures enter the battlefield, whenever 2 or more creatures you control attack a player, look at the top 5 cards of your library, grab a creature from among them, put it in your hand, put the rest in the bottom. This is another version of Boromir. It lets anytime you get to swing with 2 or more creatures, which you always will because Eowyn spawns them for free, And then Reconnaissance Mission and Military Intelligence also draw you cards. Anytime a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card with the Reconnaissance Mission. And the Military Intelligence, when you attack with 2 or more creatures, which again, you always will be doing, you get to draw a card that way as well. This is a ton of draw power. It's enough to make sure that your hand is always filled with humans. But let's go to the next thing here. Extra combats. Eowyn's ability triggers at the beginning of combat on your turn, so we're going to get more extra combats. Rayu Storm's Edge. If it attacks alone, get another combat. Eowyn doesn't care if she's attacking. She just cares that you entered combat while she's out. So go ahead and use him as basically a doubling up of Eowyn's draw trigger and token spawning trigger. Response and Resurgence. This is a removal spell that we have access to that also says that creatures you control gain First Strike and Vigilance until end of turn and gives you an extra combat step after they swing. Scourge of the Throne. If this attacks for the first time in the turn, get another combat. Hexplate Wallbreaker. This makes any creature you control have the ability that if it attacks for the first time in a turn, you get another combat. The rule of thumb I wanted to do is that each of these should be extra combats we can use multiple times, if not are a modular card as well. So the Response Resurgent can double as a removal spell if it needs to. But we want our creatures to hit hard, right? So a lot of our humans need to be making other humans bigger so that these extra combats mean anything. So we're going to move on to the Lords and Anthems. Perimeter Scout gives 1/0 to all humans you control. Ambush Paratrooper will allow you to get +1/+1 to all of your creatures at instant speed for 5 mana. Erkenbrand says that whenever it enters or another human enters the battlefield under your control, make your creatures get +1/+0 until end of turn. That triggers for each creature you bring out. So Eowyn will automatically be giving you 2 power, and if you have extra combats, that'll be 4 power, and if you're spawning other tokens via other means, 6, 7, 8, 9, eventually your 1/1 human tokens are swinging for like 10. Then we have Wrath, the Weatherlight Stalwart, similar to the Ambush Paratrooper, gives all creatures you control 1/1 in Vigilance. He also has a funny draw trigger attached to him as well. Tori, the Avant Fury Rider, also says whenever it attacks, all other creatures you control get 1/1, and your white creatures get to untap, meaning we can use them for tap triggers later, and your red creatures gain Trample. Those can be very important stats to have on our creatures. Then we have Baragon of the Guard. Whenever Baragon of the Guard or another human ETBs, go ahead and give all your creatures 1/1 in Vigilance until end of turn. Again, this stacks and doubles up with Eowyn's trigger. Frontier Warmonger. When one or more creatures attack one of your opponents or a planeswalker they control, all of your creatures gain Menace, or any creature that is attacking gains Menace until end of turn. We make it a lot harder for people to block our stuff. Marshal's Anthem, all our creatures get 1/1, but it also allows us to spawn damn near every creature from our graveyard if we have the mana to sink into it as a double modular effect on it. Sanctuary Lockdown, all humans get 1/1, and because I mentioned the tapping ability from earlier, we can use it to tap a creature that our opponent controls. So there's a lot of instances where we can use this to make people lose access to mana dorks when they otherwise would need them, to prevent them from hitting us with a giant dinosaur, which have become more prevalent as of the most recent precons. Tons of things Sanctuary Lockdown can do. Coppercoat Vanguard. Each other human you control gets 1/0 and has Ward 1, making them a little more durable. But let's go ahead and go into the last card in here that I want to focus on, Shared Animosity. I can't believe this is a budget card we get to use in this deck. It's 39 cents on TCG Player right now. Anytime a creature we control attacks, it gets 1/0 for every other attacking creature that shares a type with it. So if we've got 10 tokens, they all get 10/0. Like, this, with our token spawning mechanics we're going to show later, this card can get nasty. It can get very, very nasty. And because they're tokens, we don't even care half the time if our opponents are blocking them. We'll just respawn the tokens later. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with just respawning our tokens. But let's go ahead and go back to here because we are going to be building a big board. How are we going to protect that board from board wipes? Well, we have the Deputy of Acquittals. When it enters the battlefield, return any other creature we have back to our hand. This lets us double up on ETB triggers. This also allows us to do things like protect our commander from having to spend commander tax. We can do a lot of things like protecting important board pieces with this at flash speed, and of course, it is a human wizard. Then we have Gilrain. You can pay 2 and tap it to exile a creature you control, and then put it into the battlefield at the end of the turn with a Vigilance and Lifelink counter on it. The Vigilance and Lifelink counter are neat. The main reason we're using this is because if we have a big token spawner or our commander that's about to die in a board wipe or about to get targeted, we're going to use this as a budget Mother of Runes, basically. Then the frontline medic, you can sack it to counter any spell with X in its mana cost, but that's not the important part. The important part is whenever it or at least 2 other creatures attack, creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. This is going to make it to where your token army will never die as they are crashing into people over and over and over and over again. And then, of course, at instant speed, we have Unbreakable Formation. Creatures we control gain indestructible, but if we use it in our main phase, then those creatures also gain Vigilance until end of turn, which can help us a ton on making sure that we can block. It also adds 1/1 so we can hit even harder. But now let's go ahead and go into the token generators themselves. Prince Imrahil the Fair. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, which remember, we are doing a lot with Eowyn, make a human token. Rally at the Hornbug. Make 2, or Hornberg. Make 2 1/1 white human creature tokens. Human you control gain haste until end of turn. This will make all of our tokens swing much quicker if we need it to. Flame Rush Rider. Whenever it attacks, create a token that's a copy of another attacking creature. Taps and attacking. We get to double and triple up on ETBs this way. It also has dash, so if we want this card to be protected, we can do that. Increasing Devotion. Just spawn 5 1/1 human tokens immediately. And then it's got flashback. The most important thing with this is that we get to activate this, and Eowyn is automatically online for her draw. Riders of Rohan, it's a knight in and of itself. It makes 2 red human knights with trample and haste when it comes out, and it's a dash creature as well, so we can pop it on the board, get its effect, put it back to our hand, and just keep spawning those tokens over and over again if we don't have a way to blink it already. Visions of Glory makes a 1/1 human creature you control for each creature you already control, and of course it's got flashback. Then we've got Call for the Coppercoats. We can make a white human soldier token for every creature that every opponent has, so long as we have the mana to sink into its Strive ability. And then Horn of Gondor. When Horn of Gondor enters the battlefield, make a human token. Pay 3 and tap it. Create X human tokens, where X is the number of humans you control. We get to use this and double and triple and quadruple up on our human tokens constantly. But how are we going to ramp to the point where we can do this? Well, of course, we've got a pretty substantial 12-card ramp package here. Of course, we got Arcane Signet. We did not include a Soul Ring so that we can keep ourselves under that budget, but if you find a way to cram one in, feel free to put it in. Honored Heirloom, which is one of my favorite mana rocks. It's a 3-mana mana rock. I know people don't like that these days, but it allows you to have graveyard control, and I think it's a responsible building thing to have a way to interact with graveyards no matter what you are building. Then we have all 3 of the diamonds because they are very good 2-mana budget mana rocks everybody has access to for about 6 cents each. Knight of the White Orchid. This can grab any planes from our deck and put it on the battlefield, as can the core Cartographer. Note that they don't say basic planes. We can grab dual lands with these, and I actually have searchable duals in this deck despite the budget, so keep an eye on that. Our 3-mana mana rocks, we have our Letter of Acceptance and Commander Sphere, both for the same reason. We can sack them to draw a card when we need them to. And then, of course, we have Wayfarer's Bauble. I guess we'll just distinguish myself from Commander's Quarters by not putting the Wayfarer's Bauble first. And then we've got Verge Rangers. You can look at the top card of your library anytime. If somebody has more lands than you can play lands from the top of your library. This will allow us to continue to just get more and more lands on the battlefield, not miss our mana drops, and also get rid of bad draws from the top of our deck. And then, of course, we have Flock Chaser Phantom. This one's a neat card that I want to go ahead and run by how this is going to work for you guys. So it has Convoke, so we can pay for it almost entirely with just tapping our tokens. It has Flying and Vigilance, and whenever it attacks, the next spell you cast this turn has Convoke. Now, I want to go ahead and let you guys know that this card does massive work with any of our high mana cards. If we're having trouble playing Scourge of the Throne, if we're having trouble getting our draw powers off Distant Melody or anything, we feel like we're having to use removal on those turns or something, this allows us to just cheat one of our spells in for free every single turn. And if you have extra combat steps, this allows us to cheat multiple cards into play every single turn. But we do need to clear the way so that we can swing. We do need to make sure that people don't just see a giant board of 1/1s and not care about us. So how are we going to interact with people? Well, we have Westfold Rider. It's a human knight that you can sack to destroy an artifact or enchantment at sorcery speed. Cathar Commando lets us sack it to destroy an artifact or enchantment. The Fiend Hunter, who's basically an Oblivion Ring. When he comes into the battlefield, exile any creature until it is gone. We can blink him to change his targets repeatedly. The Devout Chaplain, we can tap 2 humans to exile an artifact or enchantment. A Braid, this just lets us blast an artifact or a creature. Artistic Refusal, another Convoke card that can either let us draw to discard 1, or it can let us counter a spell, or it can do both. This is a very neat card that I want to pull attention to. This is 2 things our deck really wants: card advantage and the ability to stop people from board wiping us, the ability to stop people from dropping down their win cons. Artistic Refusal does all kinds of work for us. It's kind of crazy that this thing exists. And I know a lot of people don't seem to run it. That's why it's at 6 cents. But in a deck spawning as many tokens as this deck is, it seems to be the perfect card to drop on people. And then, of course, we need generic ways to counter and respond to things. So we have Negate as a generic counter spell that can stop any non-creature card from touching the board. And then Reality Shift and Resculpt, these both can exile a creature. I went specifically for exile as the way that I wanted things to go away, because we see Indestructible on a lot of cards pop up, especially at instant speed. Hell, we have ways of doing it in our own deck. So sometimes you need to just exile a thing so that it cannot survive. Resculpt also has the added bonus of being able to get rid of an artifact. And then, of course, we have Generous Gift. It's a bit pricey at 34 cents for the deck, but it is an Omni removal, and I think it's important to have at least some way to kill a land in every deck that you build, because I don't know if you've had the experience of dying to Maze's End, but I have had the experience of dying to Maze's End, and I will never let it happen again. Anyways, with that, we also have a ton of lands we need to get into, making sure there's nothing else that we are missing here. I opted to not have a ton of board wipes in this deck because I think we need to have the big board. We are the ones who are going to trigger other people to board wipe. But looking at our lands, we have Surtland Frostpire. This is our only board wipe, and yes, this is a board wipe. It is a Is-It land that you can sack it to scry 2 and then hit everything on the board for 2 damage. I don't know why more people don't play this card, but this is such a cool, just little mini token board wipe that is attached to a land that I think more people should use in decks if they haven't already. And then, of course, we have the 3 Thriving lands. They are not great all the time, but I think when you're playing a budget 3-color deck, the ability to select whatever color you're missing is very, very important. Speaking of color selection, Exotic Orchard and Command Tower will give us whatever we have in our commander and whatever our opponents have available to tap. And then Mystic Monastery, generic tri-land for our deck's colors. Secluded Courtyard and Unclaimed Territory. Both of these cards allow us to just call humans, and then they can tap for any color that our humans have. And now, here's the spice, the fun ones. The way that we are going to abuse the Core Cartographer and our ability to get planes out later on. We have Irrigated Farmland, a searchable cycle land. If we're clogged up on lands, we can throw it away, but otherwise, it is a plains island that can be grabbed with the Cartographer. We also have Sacred Peaks, which is a plains mountain. Despite being a come into tapped land, it is something we can fetch out of the deck that way. Prairie Stream, another fetchable land. It's just kind of amazing that we have access to these things. And then a Molten Tributary, because I wanted to go ahead and complete the fetchable cycle. Even though we don't have a way to grab the islands and mountains, if you like this deck a ton and you decide you want to upgrade it with some stuff that can grab that stuff, or if you want to put, like, land cycling in the deck, this is a way that you can benefit from that. Speaking of land cycling, Ash Barrens, this is an amazing budget land for when you are trying to mana fix. We also have the Reveal land cycle, the Port Town, the Frostboil Snarl. These lands allow us, and I believe I have the third one in here as well. Porttown, Frostboil, Snarl. I might have actually not put the last one in here if I am dumb. I think I am dumb. I don't see it. I guess I didn't put it in there. No, Furycom Snarl. There it is. I need to sort these better. So, these lands all, because we have such a high basic land type in this deck, because we are running a budget deck, these come into play untapped if we reveal a land. I think it's important to have as many untapped lands as possible in the deck, which is why I've also added fetch lands into the deck, but, you know, not fetch lands, because one fetch land takes up the entire budget of the deck. I have Esper Panorama. It can grab us a plains or an island. Grixis Panorama. It can grab us an island or a mountain. Naya Panorama. It can grab us a mountain or a plains. Myriad Landscape, which can grab us 2 of any one basic. Promising Vein, which can grab us any of one type of basic. This is just a power creep version of Esper Panorama. And then Shire Terrace, which is also the exact same card. It's a power creep version of Esper and Naya Panorama. And of course we have Bant Panorama as well. Grabs us either a plains or a island. So we have several ways to mana fix, several ways to fetch lands out of the deck. But one that I don't see people play a lot of, I don't see people play Great Hall of the Citadel. I feel like when you have a commander that has 3 separate colors, Great Hall of the Citadel does a lot of work for you. It taps for generic mana, but you can tap it with 1 mana to add 2 mana of any combination of colors and then use it to cast legendary spells, like your commander. So if you're having trouble getting your commander out on the board, this is a guaranteed way to have 2 of any mana combination you need. When you're running a deck with 3 or more colors, this is a very, very easy budget way to make mana fixing much, much easier. So, what are we going to be doing? Well, we're going to be taking our deck and ramming it down people's throats at just lightning speed. We are spawning a ton of tokens, we are drawing a ton of cards, we are getting extra combats, we are buffing all of our cards immensely. This is $15 Eowyn the Shield Maiden. And I hope not only that you find this deck fun, I'll have a link to it in the description, but I'm hoping that those of you who end up liking this format, liking this, $15 Commander Deck League, will find ways to enjoy this game on a budget. It'll be easier to bring friends into the game when the cost to play is infinitely smaller. And hell, I've learned that making decks on such a small budget, it honestly makes you make a lot more interesting deck building decisions than just, yep, the white deck gets Swords to Plowshare and Path to Exile, the blue deck gets the Pongify and the Rapid Hybridization, and then the red deck, we're going to go ahead and put the Blasphemous Act and the Vandalize in it, or the Vandal Blast in it. While those cards are all good, and I never want to take away from the power that those cards have in Magic, I think making people make decisions to build equally balanced decks, but on much, much tighter budgets, much stricter budgets, I think that will be a very fun thing for a lot more people going forward. So let me know what you plan to brew, and if you've got a brew that you want to do for this type of game, then please let me know in the comment section below. I hope to see all kinds of spicy brews in the comment section, but this one has been mine, and I'll have more in the future. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you haven't already. And insert an end of video tagline here. Hey, I just quickly want to give a thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who keep this show running. YouTube and Twitch are a pretty bumpy ride at the best of times, and the stability a Patreon provides me is worth more than I can say here. I'd also like to thank each and every one of my $20 and up patrons here, and they would be Red Joker, Blitzkrieg, Cameron, Dren, Jemshin, Smiling DM, Poundini, Mabbity Babbity, Naomi, Isaac, Agamotto, Jordan, Ravi, Giuni, Kiratorian, Prisma, all of you, I'm not saying that part, and Starlight. And finally, thank you to everyone else that helps keep this channel alive. While you're here, why not check out another video? And thank you for watching.